It's 7:07. I'm Daedalus Howell. Take a stroll anywhere through Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, California, the nation, and you'll see a problem that's persisted for decades: homelessness. In Santa Rosa, however, it seems like it's on an uptick. We see more people in distress. Why is this? The city says the numbers are coming down, but why do we see more? What's being done to help them? What's being done by the city? What can we do? We've had many guests on the show from city government, from the mayor to the city manager, to city council members, to supervisors who've come on to talk about how this issue is being addressed. Well, today we're going to talk with JennieLynn Holmes-Davis. She's the Director of Shelter and Housing Programs at Catholic Charities. And welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So it does seem that optically there's an uptick in homelessness. And yet every source that we have says that it's actually declining. What's happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the numbers do show on an annual basis that our homelessness has declined in Sonoma County overall. And in the last 3 years specifically, it's actually declined over 30%.
Well, that's huge.
Which is wonderful. It shows that some of the major interventions we've really invested in the last couple of years are paying off. Obviously, there's more to do. However, I would completely agree that the visibility has definitely increased.
Now, there are several theories to this, and if you talk to anybody in any department in the city, they each have their own answer, right? Because they each have their own department, and they believe they have a take on it, and they do. One thing that came up recently, we had a gentleman from Smart Train, and he pointed out that because of the tracks being built where often campsites are, those people are being displaced from those areas and are coming into the city. That's just one. What do you think others are?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, I would agree that that's probably the largest. We were involved in a lot of that over the last few months with our homeless outreach services team, helping with those individuals that were displaced, trying to get them into longer term intervention. So I definitely think that the railroad tracks have been neglected for years, and so there were hundreds of people living along there that now have to find a new place to go, and so they have been
let's pause there. Hundreds of people.
Yeah, along the railroad tracks. There was one encampment we cleaned up that we felt there was at least 50 to 100 people there alone.
And where they have tents and temporary structures and stuff?
Yeah. Yes.
And were they allowed to persist there? Sort of like,
it wasn't necessarily sanctioned, but it was it wasn't necessary. They were, when things happened, people came in and dealt with it, but it wasn't necessarily very visible in the community, so not a lot of people even knew it was there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, as your organization does a lot of outreach and that kind of thing, were you brought in to kind of step in and help alleviate some of the burden of the homeless people there?
Yeah, so we definitely were reaching out to the individuals. This was when a lot of this activity started, when our outreach team first started in Sonoma County and with the city of Santa Rosa. And so we were just initially brought in. But a couple of the other things that have also increased the visibility is the waterways. There's been a recent intent to make sure that we get our waterways cleaned up, we get our creeks cleaned up. And again, a lot of that has to do with homelessness, living alongside of the creek. So that's also dislocated a lot of individuals. And then we've done a great job engaging individuals. We've actually engaged 90% of the people we engage end up saying, yes, I would love to go into housing, or I would love to come into services. The issue with our community is we don't have the housing inventory necessarily to be able to put them into a unit. So we have the funds to help pay the rent. We have the people willing to work with us and to come into housing, but we don't necessarily have the housing on the other end.
So this is fascinating. So you guys actually have money to help assist pay people's rent,
yes,
but there's no place to pay that rent.
Exactly.
Where does the money come from?
The money is a mixture of a variety of places. Some of it is federal, some of it is state, but very recently the city and the county have both also put in money to be able to rehouse people, help subsidize their rent, but most importantly also pay for the case management support once they're in a home, to continue to stay in the home and regain self-sufficiency, because for a lot of the people we're serving, just putting them in a home isn't enough. You have to have the support services alongside of them to be able to make sure they stay in housing.
Wow. And does this happen in discrete areas? I know that you guys are working with the CAB, which is the Community Advisory Board.
Yes, the Community Advisory Board. Currently, one of the things that we're actively working on with them right now is the community improvement grants, and I'm on the Community Advisory Board, so I'm very excited about that opportunity as people who have ideas around how we can work on homelessness or just help bring our community together, our neighborhood together. There's these $1,000 grant opportunities that people can utilize to take on projects.
That's great. And what's fascinating to me is that we have homelessness at all, right, in this modern age.
Absolutely.
But as you point out, there's a dearth of housing available, just generally.
Yep.
And so low-income housing, I would imagine, as you pointed out, also is more rare these days.
Yeah.
How do we help prevent homelessness to begin with? What are the precipitating factors that lead people to get in that situation?
There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
A lot of it can be traced back to childhood and upbringing. There's a whole upstream investment philosophy around how we make sure that our children are hitting their key developmental goals, because that is a huge indicating factor that people are going to end up either in poverty or in low-income situations.
You're saying this begins as early as childhood?
It can, yeah. There is generational homelessness, and that's part of what we're trying to do, is break the generational homelessness.
In Santa Rosa?
Absolutely.
Theoretically, then, we can go to a school and maybe earmark children who are at risk to become homeless when they become adults.
Absolutely.
What are some of the factors?
So some of the factors are hitting your, third grade reading level is one of them.
Wow.
Early entrance into, early childhood care and things, and, kindergarten graduation rates, all of those things, it can get traced back as far as that. I mean, there are also situations like low income or unemployment or, living wage, other issues that can also create homelessness down the road. But one of the things that can happen really quickly is when someone is right on that cusp of becoming homeless and they end up homeless, there is an acculturation piece to becoming homeless. And because of the psychological trauma and the unnecessary things they're having to deal with, their brain can almost reset in a way where this becomes the norm. It's normal to be homeless, and so then we have to try to break those psychological bonds that they've created with maybe others on the street, or just the culture of it is becoming homeless.
Wow, so that becomes the new normal.
Can.
And then to extract somebody from that environment, we're actually sometimes asking them to give up friendships, to completely change their lifestyle and a routine. I'd imagine that's actually really difficult, as tantalizing as living indoors might be.
Absolutely. And that's been an interesting component, especially with our Palms Inn program that just opened, where we converted 104 units of motel rooms into permanent supportive housing for homeless veterans and the chronically homeless. And it's definitely been an interesting pathway of, some people were not ready to make that move, and it's been a huge transition for a lot of them, breaking off of those negative behaviors that they may have been involved in before. Right. Be saying, "Am I worthy of a home?" Sometimes they don't even think that they're worthy of a home, because it's just taken such hold of them. And there was one person that we moved in, and for the first 3 months, he could only sleep in a tent in his living room. We had a bed, we had all the linens, but he had to make that transition from tent to living room to a bed. And so everybody's journey is very different.
And I guess you guys just have to give them the space and respect that particular process.
Absolutely. And that's a big change as well, is we have to make sure that we are respecting their journey and going alongside of them and not trying to force things to happen too quickly.
Wow. We're talking with JennieLynn Holmes-Davis. She's the Director of Shelter and Housing Programs at Catholic Charities. We'll be right back. It's 7:07. We're back with Jennie Holmes-Davis. She's the Director of Shelter and Housing Programs at Catholic Charities. This is very challenging work. How do you invest yourself in this and not be overwhelmed by the totality of problems you're facing with your clients?
That's a great question. It's definitely difficult work. The people we're working with have experienced such trauma in their lives and are going through such trauma that there's a secondary trauma upon caregivers. with that population.
And that's a really real thing, that you can
Absolutely.
take that trauma and then it becomes your
It
trauma.
can, absolutely. When you're hearing some of the stories and you get connected to these individuals, trying to help them on their pathway back to independence, you get connected with them, you build relationships.
And you internalize their stories.
Absolutely. So it's definitely huge in this line of work. So I am very grateful. I have an amazing team that I work with. Behind me, there's a whole host of people that are working alongside of the people we serve, and it's just awesome to be able to connect with them and to feel like we're working together as a team. So we lean on each other a lot.
Anyone you want to shout out in particular?
There's quite a few, but
we got 8 minutes in the segment. Just roll on.
I have a really great assistant director who he does a great job helping with a lot of the operations. All of my management staff that have been with me for a long time, we lean on each other for support, and that flows throughout the entire department. And most importantly, for people who take care of me, my husband, he just does an amazing job at helping me and taking me out to the coast. That's my happy spot where I recharge, and we just have a lot of fun getting to kind of get out of where we're in, where my job is, and go out and have some fun together.
Did you grow up here?
I am born and raised in Santa Rosa, and I always knew that I went off to college for a few years, but I knew I was coming back here, and this is where I wanted my home to be.
Where'd you go for college?
My undergraduate I did at University of California, Davis.
Right on, yeah.
And then my graduate was with University of San Francisco.
But you knew that you were going to come back and work in your town.
Absolutely. I knew I'd be coming back here. I knew this is where I wanted to raise my family and where I wanted to have my roots for the rest of my life.
What is it about Santa Rosa that keeps you here? That brought you
my
back?
goodness, there's so much. I mean, first it's just the proximity to everything. We're 45 minutes from a large city. We're 45 minutes from the ocean. We can drive up to the drive up to the mountains to go skiing. And so part of that is our family's here.
But it's more than just going everywhere else.
Yeah.
I love Santa Rosa because I can get out of there fast.
Well, the thing I love about Santa Rosa too is that it's kind of a big town, but it doesn't have that big town feeling. It still feels like a small town. You can still go to the grocery store and run into people you grew up with here, and you still feel like we're a true community. And I guess that's part of what I really love about the Community Advisory Board too, is it helps us get involved in that.
Do you think that's changing though? Do you think we're a city that's in transition? I mean, I feel like we're on the cusp of becoming like a big city.
Yes, I think
probably city, but a city,
I think so, but then at the end of the day, I go and I say, man, I know someone who knows this person, and all day long that seems to happen to me. And so, it still feels like that small town community. And I think that, while we are growing and our housing costs are rising and other things are, external factors are coming in, I'm excited to see how we can actually become more of a community through technology like the smart train and through, advances in, bringing our community together with Courthouse Square and things like that. I think we can work as a city to help continue that small town feel while still growing, which is great because people want to be here. I want to be here, so I imagine other people do too.
And as part of the Community Advisory Board, you have a hand in helping shape all that. Are you on the board as a representative of Catholic Charities or just as a neighbor?
As a community member, I'm appointed by Julie Combs.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
What was it about this kind of work, though, that brought you into it?
I
didn't study in college to do this.
So I have quite an interesting path to my job here. I started, my undergraduate was in history and sociology. And
it all makes sense now.
My original plan was actually law school.
Oh, wow.
And so I moved back here and wanted to take a couple years off to save money and, study for the LSAT, and then what ended up happening was I got a part-time job as a Catholic Charities as a counselor. So I started working very closely with the chronically homeless in our community. And once I got into this work, I just fell in love with the people and the stories they had and the history behind them and the potential and excitement they had in experiencing new things. I knew this is like an area that I wanted to invest and see how I could help create change. And so I was able to actually work my way into this position as the director and really really appreciate my experience on the direct line, being able to work with the people individually, and now being able to work at this level with, looking at systems and how we can do better and how we can collaborate more is also very exciting.
It is, yeah. This is what happens to me after I have these conversations, right? I think, wow, where would I go if I was homeless? And I drive home and I'm looking around, right? The other thing is, like, I get to my big old Victorian flat and realize I have surplus of space and feel guilty that I haven't just taken someone in.
Yeah.
How do you mitigate feelings like that? And that's obviously a totally irresponsible way to think. Just come on in, come live with me. It's cool. I mean, but how does the layperson like myself and others watching, what are we supposed to do besides open our doors? I mean, I can't think of like directly how we can help.
Absolutely. So there's so many things that people can do. First is, it's okay to have those feelings, and to have those feelings is actually good because that means that there's empathy, and there's a lot we can do when people empathize, and so that's a great thing. And it's struggles for the person, but there's a way to channel that empathy, and so there's a lot of people working on this issue. One of the greatest things I've seen over the last few years is the city council has, and the board of supervisors as well, have really stepped up and taken this issue on as an important issue to them. They've even created a subcommittee on homelessness through the city council. And so this is definitely a huge issue that people can get involved in. So part of it is showing up and saying, how can I help? How can I channel this empathy into action? How I think we're going to solve homelessness, it's not going to happen by Catholic Charities alone. It has to happen through everybody coming together and saying, we are not okay with the fact that we have homeless families. We have kids who are being born into poverty and on the streets, and we need to do something about it. And so that empathy is the beginning of change to me. And I think one quick step people can take is they can come and actually take a tour of the facility and see what it's like, and then you can pick how I can get involved and how I can make a difference within that program.
Let's come back to that in a second. It's 7:07, and we're talking with JennieLynn Holmes-Davis. She's the Director of Shelter and Housing Programs at Catholic Charities. We'll be right back. We're back. 7:07. I'm Daedalus Howell. We're talking with JennieLynn Holmes-Davis, Director of Shelter and Housing Programs at Catholic Charities. We left off the last segment talking about cultivating empathy and channeling that as a way that we can help. So I want to talk about what we can do to help, and then maybe look at what we can do if we need help. So you're talking about coming down and seeing the facility. That's huge. Do you have visitors come down?
Yeah, we have tours that we offer to people in the community. They happen twice a month, and it's a great way to, as a first entry point, to understand what it's like to live in one of these programs and how people can get involved. Because you walk down the hallways and you say, oh, I could help in the kitchen, or I would love to help with, handing out clothes, or I would love to help at the front desk. Everyone has different skill sets, and being in the actual facility helps you really see how you might be able to channel your efforts.
You visualize yourself in the place.
And one of the things that I firmly believe in is in creativity and innovation, and I don't think we've thought of everything that's going to help solve this issue. And so if people have a great idea, we mentioned the community improvement grants, and those are $1,000 opportunities to implement a brand new program. And I know one that got implemented last year was actually handing out clothes to the homeless during the winter times, and this grant helped support that.
That's great.
So the city's community improvement grants really are a great way for people to also come up with new ideas and try them out on how we can help the homeless.
And I love how the city recognizes that those ideas have to come from the ground floor. They have to come from the community itself in that specific neighborhood.
Yes.
Only you who live there are going to understand what you actually need or what your neighborhood needs. So that's cool they recognize that and make that available to you.
Yeah, and every neighborhood's different, and the impacts of homelessness are different on different neighborhoods. So how do we work together? How do we all sit in a room together and come up with solutions? Because homelessness affects every part of our community, and there's power in all of our minds together rather than just my mind alone.
Right. How do you deal with a neighborhood that has a sort of what they call NIMBY, not in my backyard syndrome?
Yeah.
Right? How do you convince somebody on the block who just wants to call the cops, or is accusing somebody of loitering or whatever, who may travail past their home? How do you deal with that? How do you change that mind and that heart?
Well, and you know, and there's valid concerns, and people who just want to feel heard sometimes. So for me, I am very big, and let's sit down and have a conversation. I want to hear your concerns, and then hear what we're trying to do to help fix them. And so we really encourage open dialogue. I sit in regular community meetings in the neighborhoods that we work in. Very often listening back and forth dialogue, and when there's that consistency and you feel like you have a relationship and open communication channels, I feel like a lot of that ends up being actually going away. And so I've actually seen a huge amount of people that we have actually turned into our donors and into our volunteers who at the beginning were very against some of the things that happened. And so great. I think that it's important to know that there's a reason why they feel that way. It needs to be validated, and we need to work together on a solution, because I feel there's always can be compromise, and there's things we could be doing better, we could be doing differently, and vice versa, because we're all neighbors. Yeah. And it's important to treat this as our community, and the homeless are part of that community, and we need to help them and lift up our neighbors who are most in need as much as anybody else.
It's a really healthy way of looking at it. Homeless are part of the community. They're in the community.
Yeah.
And by default, they are your neighbors, even if they don't have a home.
Absolutely, and the numbers actually show that 86% of the people who are living here in Sonoma County who are homeless were living in Sonoma County when they became homeless.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's a perception that homeless come here for the services, when in fact they originate here.
Absolutely.
Which means they really are your neighbors. Mm-hmm. How does someone become homeless these days, and what do they do if they're in danger of that?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why people become homeless, and I always, homelessness is always a symptom of a larger issue going on in someone's life. So if you look at it medically, that's, it's a symptom of something bigger. So how do we get to that root cause of what is that brought them to homelessness?
We talked a little bit about that before.
Yeah.
But what do we do now if somebody's facing homelessness?
So it's really important. There are so many amazing community resources out there for people to get connected to. And I think looking at how we can prevent homelessness starts with people being educated and making sure that they know what resources are out there, and they know that Catholic Charities is here to help, Community Action Partnership is here to help, the Living Room, all these great people who are trying to make a difference in the community are here. And so education is a big component. For Catholic Charities specifically, we have an entire department dedicated to preventing homelessness, and they can get in touch with us and we can help with things like financial management, budget management. Maybe we can make some adjustments there, or maybe we need to get you enrolled in CalFresh or get you enrolled in other sorts of resources that will allow you to increase your income and reduce some of your debt.
How does somebody recognize that they're in limbo, that they could actually face homelessness?
Well, people who are living paycheck to paycheck are often people that we're seeing in our prevention world, and one medical trauma can totally throw that off balance. One car accident can totally throw that off balance. And so I think things like that, if you're feeling like you're not able to live in a way that is less stress. I guess everyone lives with stress, but less stress than with your bills and things like that. That's the time to reach out, because there are so many resources out there that we can get people connected to.
And then let's talk about how to do that. What do we call? Do we go to the website? What do we do?
Yeah, so you can always come to Catholic Charities website. It's srcharities.org. Another great resource is 211. You can just dial 211, and they have a huge bank of community resources available for people.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, you call 211, you dial 211, kind of like 911, but it's not that bad.
Before the emergency.
And then allows you to find out all of the resources that are in our community that they have, and they keep their database very, very well up to date. And again, you can also just call Catholic Charities. If we don't have the resource ourselves, we're pretty sure we know which resources to be able to get to people.
You're wired. You know everyone.
And again, coming on a tour of our facility and being able to see what it's like. Oftentimes, people are, there's this perception out there what a homeless shelter looks like.
Right.
And when people come and see, it's very different from what people think. And so they feel more comfortable making those referrals and making those connections for people.
I'm going to ask you a really dumb question. Do you have to be Catholic to participate in the program?
That's a great question, and we get it a lot. And you do not have to be Catholic to participate in the program. You do not have to be Catholic to work, volunteer, be a donor or anything. We are here because of the Catholic social teachings and the roots in the gospel, but we do not proselytize. We do not make anybody commit to anything. We just do it because this is part of acting out our faith.
If there's somebody who's watching who knows someone on the brink of becoming homeless or may be homeless themselves, what can you say to them?
The first thing is to, again, take action and get them connected to us. We are out there and we serve a huge number. We serve about 4,000 homeless every single year, but there are more out there that needs to be helped. And so we want those community connections, and we want people who are, hey, there's this person sleeping there. I feel uncomfortable with it. Can you come help? We would love to come and help. And so there are two ways people can get them connected to us. One is we do have a response line that's actually funded by the city of Santa Rosa, and it's 1-855-707-HOST.
Nice.
And we also have
that's my number.
Yeah, right. And it's attached to, we have our outreach workers who will be ready to come and be able to address the issue. And then we also have an email address, host@srcharities.org.
That's great.
And people can email there as well, and it will get dispatched to an outreach worker to reach out to the individual.
That is awesome. JennieLynn Holmes-Davis, Director of Shelter and Housing Programs for Catholic Charities. Thank you so much for being on, and I hope you come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.